Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. So, I think the last stream was on Tuesday perhaps, so it's been quite a few days, but I have been working away as much as possible and have a few more things done. So one thing that I think I did focus on was kind of trying to finish off the kind of core UI elements, but also slight restructuring to the data structures that I had. So in the last stream I talked about having a design structure, a blueprint structure, and a design project structure. Obviously the design structure has gone. I've removed that, and now we're just left with the blueprint structure and the design project structure for use within the game for technologies. And we can go to the castle and we can see basically here where we're initializing the designs. Some of the terminology still hasn't been updated, so we're initializing designs but we're creating a blueprint and we're adding them to an array of blueprints, but that's just names and they are they are easy to change. And the key thing here is that I am creating a blueprint from our technology structure. And as we can see, almost all of the properties are copied over except for the information sprite. And I'm not 100% confident that I need to do that for the most. It may be a little bit more efficient, particularly when I need some of the properties related to the blueprint and the particular technology name. But it's really just down to efficiency and whether it's nicer to kind of copy everything over and get this slightly larger structure, or whether it's actually better to have a slightly smaller structure and use a data table directly to get the images as and when required. The main difference is these additional properties at the bottom. So we have the display name, we have the category, we also have the epoch for which the tech is for. That's not copied over because that's only ever needed here. We have research time that's copied over, whether it's manufactured in the factory, whether it requires a laboratory to research, and then our sprites. And then above and beyond that, we have a Boolean value to say whether we can or can't design it, called can design. And we also have a design ready Boolean value, and then we have the recipe index. And what I've effectively done is combined what was originally the design structure and the blueprint structure, because mostly it was the same except for the kind of the available flag. The designs were only displayed within the research window, and they used the available flag to say whether they should or shouldn't be shown, whereas the blueprint was being used elsewhere. And the advantage to merging them together is that now I can use the blueprints on all the screens. So I can demonstrate this with actually doing some research. So I've put in pretty much every screen here now. There's a link to each of the screens. The only two that don't work is the mining or the construction one and the factory one. But we can go into the blueprints, the repair, the defense, the combat. Actually, the defense probably doesn't have that, but I can't remember. Defense, offensive, and resources, which is what we've got, and the research. So the research, as you can see, does display all of the research that's available with the kind of default set of resources. So that's still filtered. It is displayed in order here because I didn't open it immediately. It doesn't. I haven't actually fixed that. So if you go into it straight away, it does add them in the order that they are made available. Now all of the panels are persistent, so if we move out and move in, we see it exactly how it was prior, which is why when we go into the defense, we can see that the number of people kind of flicker a little bit, and I'd like to clean that up at some point in the future. But with a widget switcher, which is basically what this is using, it's clear that when a widget is not kind of at the top of that switcher, its tick isn't called, and that's good for efficiency. Obviously, as I say, not ideal for this scenario, but we may be able to do some things to fix that in the future. So anyway, we can perform the research. Everything's got a very small time, I think about 12 seconds, 12 ticks, so that I can research things very quickly. So we just basically research one of everything. And then we can go into the blueprint. We can see that all the blueprints are here that we've researched. We can see the recipe that it's chosen to use for them. Still there's some refinement in there, but the excuse me, the core concept is working. We can see that the shield is available in the repair. The defense is available in defense. The offensive items available in the offensive. And obviously they're not available in the research. And as I say, the key enabler to that was using a single structure for the technology throughout the game. It's basically just modifying the can design flag to say whether it should or shouldn't show up in the research screen or the panel, alongside the design ready. Design ready means you've already researched it, so obviously that works there. The laboratory required in the manufactured obviously aren't necessarily used yet because we can't build the factory or the lab, but the values are there, and there's placeholders for when I need to check them, at least in some cases. So I think that's the kind of key thing that I've been working on. There's obviously been a couple of little iterations with that, but that's the focus. That was the focus point, and that leaves me with kind of two outstanding parts, really key outstanding parts. And the first one is the construction of additional buildings, and the second one is the factory. Once those two are done, then the UI elements are fairly complete. Apart from kind of the interaction with in this case the buildings, as well to repair and so on. So there's still the interaction with the kind of main play space that needs to be done. So I'm actually going to quickly put together the factory, and to do that I need to change the island. And I haven't changed the island for a while now, so I'm not even sure how to do it. It's been so long since I've just been using the standard island. I forget where it's set. I think it's in the game instance, so let's dig that out. Let's do the game mode. So So I'm going to pick, just because the start location is 6, I'm going to pick an island that still has 6, or hopefully. We're going to pick one in the 1950s. We will go with dust. Well, actually no. We'll go with... Doesn't really matter. Utopia. That's a good one. We'll go with Utopia. Slightly higher than I wanted, but it's at least a name I can pronounce. So, Utopia. Back to the instance. Something I don't think that the Utopia has a sector location 6, so we'll just have to pick a sector. Yeah, we'll go with location 7 instead. Location 7. So still need to fix up kind of like the start of game stuff, but to be fair, I didn't really expect it to work first time. It would have been nice if it did. New world instance, that's why. Not that instance. Just put this back. See if that works. Okay, great. So we've got a different island. Obviously, that bit still works. That's quite good. I haven't actually, as I say, changed island for quite some time, so it's quite good that that's still working. Obviously, the color of the actual preview here isn't right, but that's a different issue entirely. So the main thing that I'm interested in is, firstly, do we have the right technology? Well, at the moment, we have no technology. Now, I'm thinking that's probably because the resources we've got, well, are obviously wrong in the sense that we are accessing them all, but it's not too much of an issue. We'll just put some people down, and then hopefully we should see some things being unlocked, or made available at least. Speed that up. I only start with 20 people, so... But I would have expected some of the research to come through. So in the output log, we do put out some information about how many. Yeah, so we have 10 designs and 4 recipes in this particular sector. Ah, okay, good. So we're seeing something now. They must take quite a lot of resources. Okay. And begin design of those things do not work. So I think I know what that is. In the player controller, I do a check related to whether the player has the lab or not in the research handling. Begin design project. So then we jump over to the castle where the design project is actually initialized. And we have this check here to say whether we can design it. That's obviously going to be true because we have the available resources, but there's another one here about whether we have the lab. If it doesn't require the lab, then we carry on. If it does require the lab, this is where we would actually check that we have the lab. But at the moment we can just tie them together. Let's go back. So I will quickly just look at what the recipes of this particular sector are. Or at least what the available resources are then. Marmite and onion and some other one. Did pass the jet a second ago. There we go. Quite a lot of recipes for the jet. Now what? Oh yes, I've got no people left. So as I say, according to the output, there should be 10 designs with 4 recipes. Not really sure what I need more to get them because I've got quite a few of the things. So what are the recipes? So it takes 2 onions for my jet and 2 onions and 1 blue thing for my bazooka. It kind of implies that probably the other resources are used for the other recipes, but not quite sure why I'm not seeing them. So yes, there is the 2 onion. I haven't yet figured out what the benefit of a perfect recipe is. Quite often the perfect recipe seems to take more stuff than any other variation. Like 2 onions is quite a small amount of resources in comparison to this perfect recipe that takes 5.5 tediums. So but yeah, as far as I can tell, that is the only recipe I can do. Unfortunately, I don't actually list what the designs are at the time I show them by default. But initialize designs. Where did I put that? There's a bit of debug code that I have somewhere. Don't need that one. Actually, I'll keep that. The player research part's not necessary, but the rest does have a slight usefulness to it. So where... I have some code somewhere. That outputs the must be in the castle. Although I've checked this one, haven't I? Maybe it's in the UI. Yeah, so I have some output somewhere that kind of just displays all of the information about the available blueprints or available designs. And that might help me identify why I can't see more than just the two. Okay, I don't know where it is, but that's not too important. We can see that those two things work, and obviously those two things require a factory and a lab to actually to work with. Now, our sector. So we currently have a castle reference, and we have our castle here and our building. I think the castle was taken from the older implementation that I had, or at least copied from. Don't need the sprites. Component, not the actor itself. Mine. I think this is what we want. Yep. Doesn't have actually any code in it either. So what we will do then is copy the mine and the lab and the factory, and then we'll just rename them to be consistent with everything else that we have in this directory. To get the spelling of that correct. It's tedious, longer than I expected. Okay, so the three easy buildings, the laboratory, mine, and the factory, were all built at given epoch level. None of these should do anything. So I'm going to take out the project, the researchers, remaining time, but keep the spites in, I think. Though I don't think I need the spites. So I think I use these now. But I'll leave the spites in just in case. So it uses that. Actually, then perhaps using the original T_ buildings probably not the best solution because they don't parent from the right thing. I'm fairly certain if I change the parent I'll lose all of these, although I'll probably change them and lose them anyway. Let's try it. What I thought. But we know the lab starts 1850 and ends in 1980. So just reset these images. So we'll keep the lab sprites just in case. We just have to update the mine. So don't need these ones anymore. So again, we don't need the miners, but so is the hole at 100 BC all the way to 1980. Now the hole is an awkward one because otherwise the mine is a building, it has health, it can take damage, it can be built. If I have the hole in here as well, the deep mining pit, then I'm likely going to get confused on which one is and it's probably going to cause more problem than it's worth, rather than having it separate. But obviously for the time being, while I'm not sure, I'll stick with it. But I don't think that that's a good long-term solution. Factory. So the factory again, it previously had stuff in it, but I'm not gonna do anything in the buildings, I don't think. 1800. Okay, so we're going to put together the building screen, and the building screen I think is fairly straightforward. Let's just find it. So as evident in this screenshot, it's just the standard icon, population and timer. So we have a construction panel. Not here. Defense. Okay, we don't have a construction panel. That's not what I wanted. Because I need to inherit from panel. So the construction panel is largely the same as other panels in terms of the top icon. So we just pick the defense one. So we've got a header image, horizontal, vertical, header image, then some spacers. So we can just copy all of that and drop it into here. And get rid of the technology container because we won't be needing that. But everything just comes under here. This one is going to be that one. And we'll get the button set up so we can exit it. So I've made this a little bit easier, modified it somewhat. Obviously I've added all the buttons. Oh, they're all part of the root panel, but that's okay. I need to drop in the construction panel. And that goes just before the research. So now we can see that there. Over here we can drop in the construction panel and we drop it in here. To tie it up to this array. I don't know which panel I'm missing. The factory before the offensive. Some of these probably tied up a bit wrong. Trying to keep the order here similar, so it's defense, offense, and then factory. That one was right. And then resources and then construction. So that way around. So this map here allows me to loop through each of the panels, and if it's valid, because we've got some spaces still, bind to the exit event, so I don't have to worry about adding another mapping there or binding. And then over here, this select allows us to simply change the active widget based on our exiting a panel. And also, on entering a panel as well. So we can take our construction one. That one needs to move up a bit. Don't actually know why they're editing errors, so just don't need them anyway. So now we should be able to go into the construction. It's not quite right. Tied it up wrong. I wasn't reading what I was doing here. It's just trying to keep the order the same. In this case, it just has to be the order of the enumeration. And that's that. The order of the array up there, this one doesn't matter. It's just whichever order I choose, but obviously I have to tie up the right panels to the right enumeration here. So now I can go into my construction. So we've got the lab, we've got the construction. And we need the construction items. So the construction items are all based on the epoch, and at the moment the epoch doesn't get changed within the game, but we know that this particular level can go up to whichever epoch is that, the fourth one up, and that comes from the sector at the moment. So the sector is initialized with the right epoch. But we can ignore that definitely for now, because at the moment the epochs aren't quite playing the right role. So in the construction panel, we would do a check based on the epoch being greater than a particular level. Player controlled sector. So we do this so that we can say if the current sector's epoch is greater than a particular one, then we need to allow the user to build buildings if they don't already have one. So within the tick, let's go for a sequence. So we have 3 buildings to check. First thing we want to do is see if there's already a mine. So we need to add we've got a castle reference here, which is reference to a castle. So we need 2 more. Sorry, 3 more. So this will be the mine reference. Lab reference. And the factory reference. So in our construction panel, we can now say from the sector, get the mine, get the lab, and get the factory. And obviously we just want to check if they're valid. Now it might technically be more efficient to check the epoch before the thing, but it's really not going to make too much difference. And we're not checking the epoch yet anyway. If it's not valid, we want to add the construction option. So add construction task. Just dragging around the completely wrong thing. I tend to like to line it up with the valid even if it's not. Connected to that. So obvious input would be the building, and we just have the name. So quick checks there. So this is going to add the add a widget. Now we don't have a widget for this, I don't think, or anyone that we can use. We have a research task widget that's going to be very similar, but the research task obviously looking at the design project and all that kind of stuff, and it's not where we want to go with it. So it's going to be very similar to that. So it's got timer widget. I think from a widget perspective we can copy the canvas panel down and then we can create our new widget. Construction task widget. So to say, visually it's going to pretty much be the same, but instead of a technology we'll call that building image. We'll default it to a mine, and multiply is fine. Technology level image is fine because that's actually just down to the person, and a timer widget. I think the only difference is that the horizontal bar is anchored to the top. So the horizontal bar anchored across the top. Oops. That bit wrong. It's better. So, in the research task widget, we were given a technology. We do have a design project, but I'm not. Yep, I didn't think we used that. It's an old one. Well, it's not in use. Don't know where it thinks that it's being used. Well, I'm sure it's going to tell me when something doesn't compile. That might be the research. Panel. Yeah, so we're passing it in. That obviously doesn't matter because we're never using it internally. Let's just check. So leave that running. So yeah, itemize, that's fine. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so what we want from here is the building name. And on the pre-construct, get that, select on it. Nope, not select, switch. Now, again, I don't know if I have an enum for the buildings. Maybe I should just check that. No, I don't have an enum. So just using the name for now, but might need to change that. So what we're going to do now is just set the building image to the appropriate sprite for the different things. Obviously we don't really have to do the mine because we've already got it. That's the lab. Set it for completeness. Hopefully now when we go into our construction menu we'll see 3, but no, I haven't even done half of it yet, have we? Bit preemptive there. Construction panel. So we add construction task, create widget, the construction task. We need to expose our name. And we want to add that to our vertical box here. No, I think create a new one. That'll be our task container. So we'll have to tie to the events either here or in the next one. But check that works, more or less. So we need a, don't put it in that past. It's just I've called it a widget map. Yes, I'll call it a widget map in this case too. This ensures that we don't keep adding the widget like we just did. Normally I do the checking out here, but if I do that then I'm having to redefine the building names again, so I'm going to do the checking in here. Might change it from add to something a little bit more generic, but that'll work for now. Invalid building name. is odd. Oh, I don't specify what name it is. That as well. Yes, typo in my name caused it to be a problem. Okay, back over here. To return the wrong thing there, I was returning the slot, not the widget. So now it shouldn't get spammed and recreated a million times. The factory one's wrong. That one. A bit difficult to see with the size of those images, but there we go. And the mine's done twice. Done twice because it's not connected up. Okay, now we should have all three. Yep. So obviously they got no, we don't have the icon for the mine. Sorry, the lab. Alright. Benefits of having a enum. Nope. Every time I change that I have to reconnect it up. Now we have all three. So in the construction task widget, we need to update the population working on the task. Now, unlike the design task, we don't have that kind of starting point where the player clicks the technology and that creates our design project. So we're going to have to figure out whether the player's actually got the design or construction project. Is it? The project would be done in the castle. We can check here. So construction projects. So obviously in the case of construction, the player can create multiple at the same time. We want it to be replicated to the owner. And get my windows in a mess. Data structures. So our design project contains its name, the sprite of the technology, the initial time elapsed remaining, how many people are doing it, and the recipe. Our construction project doesn't need quite so many things. because there's no image. So we'll definitely have a name. The initial time. Elapsed time. Remaining time. And not designers, but constructors. To be fairly straightforward. So back to our castle. So we don't actually need to care too much about the buildings anymore. It all comes down to the castle. Project. So our new function will get us a construction project. And this will be read-only because it can't return a reference. But obviously from the UI, that's fine. Make that an array because we can have many of them going at the same time. So what we'll do is watch it, promote it. No, actually we don't need that one. So we just need to find the project with the right name. Once that's true, we'll set it. Would break if we could. Not that it matters, actually, we won't bother. So what we need to do is not branch. But we also want to make sure that it's valid. So to do that, we break it. Say the name is not equal to none, and we return that too. So the construction project, we get its name. If it's not equal to none, then it returns true, so does the return value. That just means we don't have to check it outside of this function either. So just bring that down. And that one. So in our construction task widget, we want to get construction job or construction project for that name. Branch on that. break on that. So if it's false, then we will set the designers. Is that what we call it? So we just need to check the research panel part, research task widget. So I think I bound that in. Must have bound that in. Nope. How do I set the researchers? I'm in the construction over here. Yes, I bind that in. That's okay. Here, and I use a function. So we will put that into a function. Get construction project. No, that's not going to work. Try again. Oops. Every time. It always crashes at least once. Probably a handful of things I haven't saved as usual. Not really sure why it even crashed then, apart from I was just moving through lots of different things. See where I am. Design project, construction panel. Okay, so that seems okay. In the last case I bound it in, but I think for this one, builders, that's the better name for them. So castle, yeah, construction panel, construction task. So we can get the builders here. Set text. So in this case there is a scenario where it can be 0. That's okay. Put that in there. Fine. So if we find it, then we want to do that. If we don't find it, then we just want to set it to 0. Okay. And I'll just need the mouse interaction. So that's on the allocation container. It's where we do the mouse up and down. And this connects directly to the player controller. So we'll take that. So that's the mouse up. Do that in a moment. So on the down, it's do slightly more because we have to figure out the mouse. I have created a slightly better approach to the mouse handling. Just a little macro where we can pass in the mouse and we have our branches. It's just a bit cleaner than this, so we can basically take that. Use my utility. Left one goes over there, right one goes over there. Yep. It's effectively the same thing, it's just hidden within a macro. This makes that a bit cleaner. So now in our player controller, so we've got a research handling screen, graph. So we'll take a construction handling. There's going to be a lot less here, but at least it gives us that starting point. So we don't have a design project, we don't have an equivalent for buildings. But we do have these two and this one. I think that's it actually. So I think most of that's just going to go an error on me. It's okay. So starting at the top we have toggle allocate researchers. So this will be builders. Oops. Almost. So obviously we don't want to call that allocate deallocate researchers, we want to call allocate deallocate builders. Change the variable name in a moment. True. Let's do one. looks about right. So in this case, that's stop research. We don't really have an equivalent again. So in this case, we actually need a reference to the construction job. That's what I was trying to think of. Construction project. So we can't use the function because that gives us a copy. So we have to iterate over them manually. So once we've found it, what we did before was just get using a reference, using that index. That gives us now a referenceable one. Though we don't have a reference in that case, although that might in itself be a reference, so that's why the whole thing works. Take that. Got it here actually. So it's B, and the top one there, and B. The design project. About the mass ton of lines in a moment. So I'll leave it with that one for now, but I don't think that actually works because it's not a reference. But we shall soon find out. Well, once we've tied everything up correctly. So left mouse button on that one. So it's toggle allocate builders and toggle deallocate builders. And much like we did in the last case, in this case we just simply stop them both. I don't think the allocation, deallocation kind of process is working as well as it can. It does seem, even when we do it with research or the mining, it just seems a bit slow. Not as responsive as I want. Not working. Try tying them up properly. So we come over here. Yes, so we have a scenario here. Now the problem is we don't have a construction job for the construction. I think the easiest way to handle this is actually just pre-create the construction projects. Much like we pre-create the designs. So again, we'd probably use the sector and its epoch to determine which jobs should exist, but we're not going to do that to start with. So the remaining elapsed all needs to be 0 anyway, so we only need to set the name and the time. We'll just use 24, so that's 2 full ticks around the clock. Just hide those ones we don't want. Quite what I wanted. It's better. So let's say at one point we'll use the epoch correctly. For now we'll just go with that. Got to call that first. That's the debug that I was looking for earlier. So now within the construction panel, we probably only want to create the widgets for the construction projects we have. Castle. One advantage is that once the construction project is complete and removed, we remove it from here. So it's going to be fairly easy to deal with that process. So we take that. Not that. So we probably don't need a function for it anymore. So we needed a function just so we can have a available buildings array of names. So we keep that just so that we can remove widgets once we're done that don't have projects anymore. So we go through each project, add it to the available buildings, and for the time being we can just call this, I think probably remove that function and merge it all into this one. Once we're done, we then need to go over the widgets we have. That's not what I wanted. So general process is the same in those cases. More or less. So first we loop through all the available projects and we add a widget. That does the check. So I'm going to take that out. Put it in here. It's not particularly clear when it was doing something kind of different. Sure that that's aligned with that. So we do the check. We say that it's available. We see if we've got a widget for it. If we don't, then we create one and we add it, and then we add it to the map. We then iterate over the widgets, or the keys of the widgets. if the available buildings does not contain the name of the widget we're looking at, then we find it and remove it. And that should make sure that the widgets are kept up to date. And that's all done with the construction panel, so we should still be in about the same state. Yep. So just to make sure that that's working correctly, if we take that off, we shouldn't see any. Yep. Save and compile. Let's make sure everything's saved. Now expect the fact that they're not updating, that's all to do with the construction task widget. It's probably because they're not being allocated properly, although I'm not actually seeing anything in the console, I don't think, on the output. Nope. Okay, so we are getting here. Name's okay. Retie that up. So I'm getting over here. Oh. Has current design project. Don't think that that's necessary. Still do the check here and otherwise ignore it if it doesn't work. So for the time being, we'll just go straight for allocation, like we do at deallocation. Okay, so we're in the right place now. Yep. Okay, so the console output is working. It's allocating builders, but they're not being added because this isn't a reference. So we do have to use this one instead. For all intents and purposes, we probably just want to use this one entirely. Okay, so we can allocate people to it, Now we just need to handle the time. So our research handling has a exist in the controller in the castle. Update available to handle research. So this is the function that handles all of the research part of it. And I think kind of had as I had in one of the earlier prototypes, I actually, rather than having a design project and having construction, I had just one thing that worked in this way. Because there's I don't know if there's actually any more things that work in the same way. Manufacturing jobs work in the same way, so that would be a similar case, but that would mean that there's only a certain amount of things that population can be allocated to, and there's obviously quite a lot of repetition with the bits and pieces I put into place. But again, it's probably something that I can, well, definitely something that I can clean up in the future. So I'm going to create a new function which is handle construction. Put that in my construction set. And take all of that, paste it here. So I think in the future I might actually merge all this stuff together so that it's not running on different functions and we have just one common task. So obviously we're using construction projects of which there are many instead of just one. So just shuffle that over a minute. Because there are many, we need to loop through them. Again, we're not going to, because we're going to have to change stuff, we actually do set members in design here. And we use a design project directly because we've got an array, we need to make sure we get a reference to it. So we're just going to use a get reference and the index and just ignore this one entirely. So actually it's just, we don't need those two. You actually don't need that one or that one because they always exist. Yeah, the design project is as being a structure. Sometimes it can be initialized with no name, so we need to make sure that it actually has a name. So builders is easy, we'll just drop that one in. Remaining time goes over there. Elapsed time to there. And initial time to there. So in this case, we don't actually need to set the members because once it's complete, which is basically what that check is, we need to complete it anyway. So we don't need to set that. Oh no, that's updating it. So we do need to set that. Training comes from there. And Labs comes from there. So now with the, instead of complete design project, we have complete construction project. And we will actually have to take the project here. That shouldn't actually be too bad. We definitely need to call it again. So one thing we need to do in the task widget is update the timer in the research widget. We just call update on it, given the remaining time if people are working on it, so we can take all of that. So we have the project over there. The remaining time. The builders. Oh. Deleted the entire lot of it. So we should still see them saying infinity until we allocate, and now we can't allocate. There we go. In the castle, handle construction. So if the builders are greater than 0 and our remaining time is greater than 0, then continue. Guess we just want to know if we go there. Quite a lot of these functions I don't actually use still. I think actually one thing that I do is set the remaining time. When I'm working with the research jobs. think that's probably why they're going to 0. Yep. So now they show correctly. Not ticking away. Castle. Just tie this up. Initial, elapsed, and remaining. Print it anywhere. Let's try again. Yeah, so it doesn't look like there's any change to the numbers. It doesn't look like there's people working on it in this context. The people allocation doesn't appear to work, probably because I'm not replicating something. Or it's on the server. That needs to be on the server. There we go, that was it. So while it does make it a little bit messy, I'll leave the numbers in for now. So this should be fairly straightforward. We need to complete research. So pretty much the same as what we do when we complete the research. Because in the research case we are working on a design project, we stop the current design project, which deallocates all the population. So we need to do that. But we don't need to reset the design project like we do in this case. So that's our first part. Now we don't need to replicate this, we just need to make sure we take all the people off. It's not going to be visible after this fact, so we don't care that it's not a reference, we just know that that's got so many builders. We just take them from there and put them back into the population of the castle, so that should be fine. Design project, so we've done that bit. And now for the design projects, we iterate over the blueprints, find the appropriate blueprint, keep its index, and then we use this index to get a reference, which we then update. Now in the construction case, we just want to remove the construction job once we've finished. So we do need to find the right one. But all we need is the index for that one. Again, because we're not going to have many of them, we won't worry about breaking. Get a reference using our index. Well, in actual fact, we don't need a reference, we just need to remove it. So once we've finished iterating, we can remove it safely. And we do that. I don't think there's really anything else we need to do. Deallocate the population, done that. Remove the construction project, done that. And there we go. Obviously there's the next step of we need to actually show the building, but I think I'll do that another time. May be able to do some tomorrow and stream again tomorrow anyway, so otherwise I'll obviously continue to make progress. Definitely gonna consider kind of merging design project and construction projects into one thing. They are almost identical, except for simply the design project having the image in it, the sprite, whereas the construction project obviously does not. But that's, I could just add that for all it matters, because there's going to be manufacturing projects, which again are very much like design projects, but you can just have many of them. So rather than having lots of different things, just having an array of projects that occur with a given type is probably going to make things a whole lot easier, and kind of remove quite a bit of the duplication. Construction projects would, obviously at the moment I'm just adding all three of them. I'm going to continue with that until I've got the three other buildings kind of on the screen and done. But once the code's in, it will be about kind of just making sure the projects are only created when a building actually becomes available due to the technology level of the sector. And furthermore, there's obviously on the route menu here where the buildings actually become available, they are positioned in different places. They always go to the kind of common screen. I don't know why I've suddenly got another one. They always go to the common screen, but they normally do have separate buttons for the lab, for the factory, and for the mine. So I think that one's bust, but as I say, I think it's almost not worth fixing, since I'm quite strongly interested in changing it, because things like handle construction and handle research are very similar except for the types. So if they were using the same structure, I can merge all of that and have much less duplication. So yeah, hopefully going to be able to then get the buildings finished off over the next couple of days, and yeah, so it's going fairly well. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon. So bye for now.